Have you ever gone silent? Not out of fear, not out of defeat, but because something inside you snapped, not into pieces, but into place. That silence wasn't weakness, it was a funeral. For every version of you that begged, explained, chased, and waited. It was the sound of you finally burying the part of yourself that thought you needed their validation to breathe. And in that stillness, right there, in the moment you stopped talking, they started listening. That's the irony. You screamed for years, but the silence is what they heard. You stopped picking up the phone. You stopped defending your worth like it was up for debate. You stopped trying to prove that your love, your time, your loyalty was a gift. And they felt it. Oh, they felt it. Not in the noise, but in the void. That sharp, suffocating void where your presence used to live. Your name started echoing in their mind when the world went quiet. 2 a.m., lights off, no one to text. And that message you were sure would never come. The "I miss you," the "Are you okay?" the "Can we talk?" It arrives, not out of love, out of loss. Most people think silence is giving up, but that's because they've never wielded it like a blade. The Stoics, they knew better. Epictetus didn't just preach silence, he weaponized it. Not out of coldness, but because he understood that when you master your emotions, you master them. Silence is not retreat. It's domination without a sound. It makes people uncomfortable. It forces them to confront the space you once filled. It turns your absence into a mirror they can't escape from. And trust me, regret doesn't whisper. It screams in the silence you leave behind. When you stop chasing, you stop bleeding. When you stop explaining, you stop shrinking. And when you stop showing up where you're not seen, you start becoming a ghost they can't stop seeing in every crowd, in every quiet moment, in every replay of what went wrong. That's when the shift happens. That's when you stop being an option and become an echo, loud enough to haunt them, silent enough to stay in control. This isn't poetry. This is real. This is the man who held on for years to a woman who saw his love as background noise, until the day he went silent and she realized the whole song was gone. This is the son who spent a lifetime performing for a father who only clapped when others were watching, until he walked away, and the silence became louder than any applause. This is the friend who answered every "I need you" text, but stopped showing up the day they realized no one ever asked how he was. Silence is not passive. It's the final roar of someone who's done being unheard. And in this video, I'm going to break open 5 brutally honest, emotionally charged, deeply stoic principles that will not only restore your power, but will make the people who took you for granted ache in your absence. This isn't about payback. This isn't about ego. This is about reclaiming the throne you kept giving away to people who never deserved the crown. This is about walking so far away, they realize you were the fire they'll never feel again. Like, comment, share, subscribe. But don't just click buttons, wake something up inside. And when you're ready to let them feel the silence that carries your storm, drop this below. My silence speaks louder than anything they said. Now, breathe, lock in, because every second you watch this video is another piece of your power snapping back into place like thunder through a broken sky. Now let's get into it. Number 1, they notice when you stop explaining. At first they laugh, or worse, they don't even notice. You stop texting, stop justifying, stop trying to bridge a gap they kept widening, and they treat it like a glitch in the system. They go about their day as if your silence is just another quiet moment in the noise. But that silence, it's not passive. It's a storm holding its breath. Because silence isn't the absence of words, it's the presence of power. And when you, the one who always tried to fix things, suddenly stop explaining yourself, that silence rattles them in ways they never expected. They remember the paragraphs, the ones soaked in vulnerability, where you explained your tone, your triggers, your pain. You used to carry the emotional weight of every misunderstanding, dragging it uphill just to protect the connection, but not anymore. Now there's nothing, no explanations, no apologies, no follow-ups, just that terrifying, haunting void. And in that void, they start to hear everything they once ignored, the echoes of your restraint, the weight of your loyalty, the patience they mistook for passivity. It all floods back, louder now, because it's no longer wrapped in your comforting voice. That's when the whispering begins, in the corners of their mind, in the cracks of their confidence. Why are they so quiet? What if I pushed them too far? Were they right the whole time and I just didn't want to admit it? You see, your silence becomes a mirror they can't escape, and that mirror doesn't lie. It shows them what they broke, what they belittled, what they thought would always come crawling back. Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And that's exactly what your silence becomes, a psychological labyrinth where every corner echoes with the thought of you, the version of you they never appreciated. And that version now lives in their head, unbothered, elevated, unreachable. They start imagining who's hearing your laugh now, who's getting the warmth they took for granted. And those thoughts? They're not just painful, they're haunting. But don't mistake this for revenge. This isn't some emotional chess move. This is clarity in its rawest form. This is what happens when someone who loved deeply finally learns the art of letting go without a speech. You're no longer proving your worth to someone who treated you like an afterthought. You're no longer handing out explanations like they were owed. You've given them enough. You've bled enough. Now it's their turn to sit in the silence they once weaponized against you. And they will feel it. Not in a loud, cinematic moment, but in the quiet spaces they used to fill with your presence, in the middle of the night when the world sleeps and the guilt wakes up. They'll reach for their phone, not out of ego, but out of realization. And when they finally text you, when that notification appears after weeks or months, it won't just be a message. It'll be an invisible apology, a trembling hand wrapped in pride, whispering, "You were right to walk away. I just wasn't ready to admit it until your silence screamed louder than my ego ever could." Number 2, your emotional control will haunt them. You used to be fire, reactive, raw, impulsive. Every ignored message, every dry tone, every delayed response would send your heart into a panic and your fingers into overdrive. You'd overthink for hours, type out novels, delete them, rewrite them, trying to explain what they didn't even bother to understand. You poured your emotions like gasoline, hoping it would ignite some warmth. But all it did was burn you. They watched you unravel while keeping their own mask intact, and they mistook that unraveling for weakness. But now there's a shift. That volcano they used to trigger, it's dormant. That wildfire they used to dance around, extinguished. Now, when they provoke, you don't react. You don't scream. You don't explain. You just watch. Cold, calm, collected. And that silence, that stillness, that terrifying peace, it rattles them more than any emotional explosion ever could. Because they were counting on your chaos. They built their power on your pain. They needed you to react so they could stay in control. But now, you've ripped the puppet strings right out of their hands. You don't chase anymore. You don't argue. You don't beg for clarity from someone who once fed you confusion like it was oxygen. You've detached, and they don't know how to survive in a world where your emotions no longer orbit around them. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But what he didn't say is that this kind of strength doesn't just change you. It haunts the ones who misused your vulnerability. Because now they're looking into your eyes, expecting fire, and all they see is ice. They throw sparks and watch them fizzle. They test the waters and realize they've become an ocean too deep to control. They call you cold, but it's not coldness, it's emotional liberation. You've turned your pain into power, and now they're left standing in the ruins of the control they once had. They reach out, not with love, but with confusion. "Why are you so calm? Where did you go? Did I mean nothing to you?" But the truth is, this silence is your answer. Your emotional control is the final blow. It's the evidence that their chaos no longer gets real estate in your mind. You've walked out of their emotional war zone and built a kingdom of composure. And from that throne, you watch them spiral. They expected thunder. You gave them clouds. They expected a firestorm. You gave them fog. And it's that ambiguity, that unreadable stillness, that unsettles them most. Because now they can't predict you, can't provoke you, can't touch you. And in that silence, in that unbothered energy, they finally understand. They lost access to a version of you that fought to stay. And this new version, this emotionally untouchable, elegantly distant, devastatingly calm version, it doesn't flinch, it doesn't chase, it doesn't come back, it haunts. Number 3. Your withdrawal becomes their mirror. Your silence didn't shout. It whispered, and that whisper echoed louder than all your cries ever did. You didn't storm out. You didn't curse or destroy. You simply backed away, quietly, with finality. And that stillness, it wasn't passive. It was a mirror. A cold, merciless mirror that made them look straight into the reflection they had spent so long avoiding. You gave them nothing to argue with. No scene, no closure, just distance, just space. And in that space, every dismissive smirk, every passive-aggressive comment, every moment of neglect, they all came flooding back like ghosts with nowhere else to haunt. You see, most people can outrun guilt when you're still there, still pleading, still proving, still holding up the broken pieces, hoping they'll help fix what they shattered. But once you step back, once you go silent and let them sit with the wreckage they created, that's when the mirror turns brutal. That's when they see the blood on their own hands. Not because you screamed, but because you left. And there's nothing more haunting than being left alone with the version of yourself you never wanted to face. The Stoics knew this power. They didn't beg for peace, they became it. Cleanthes once said, "Lead me, Zeus, and you, fate, wherever you have assigned me. I follow without hesitation." And that's exactly what your withdrawal says. You didn't try to fix what refused to be mended. You didn't try to change someone who wasn't ready to evolve. You simply let go, and that wasn't weakness. It was sacred self-respect. It was your soul saying, "I refuse to be ignored, just to be included." And now they're left in the aftermath, scrolling through old texts like tombstones, replaying your old voice notes like confessions, wondering where they went wrong, not because you told them, but because you didn't. That silence, that void, that painful lack of access, it becomes the mirror that no one can escape. They thought you'd always come back, but this time you didn't walk away to teach them a lesson. You walked away because you finally learned yours. And now they see it. All of it. The moments they ignored your tears, the times they mocked your vulnerability, the loyalty they treated like background noise. Now it screams in their ears every single night. Because your withdrawal wasn't just absence, it was justice, it was clarity. It was the final, devastating truth. You were the light they kept dimming. And when that light vanished, all that was left was their own shadow. They don't miss you because you were perfect. They miss you because you were the last person who tried to see the good in them. And now, without you, the mirror shows them exactly what they are. And they can't look away. Number 4. The calmness you built becomes their chaos. They felt invincible when you were the one spiraling, when your world was crashing and you kept trying to rebuild it with shaky hands just to keep them comfortable. They thrived. They sat in that calm like kings on a throne built from your confusion. They watched you tear yourself apart to keep the connection alive, and they stayed still, unmoved, like they were made of ice. They were at peace as long as you were in pieces, as long as you were explaining, chasing, checking in, waiting for replies like scraps of affection thrown from a cold table. They felt powerful. You were drowning, and they were dry. But then, something shifted. You healed. Quietly, without a warning shot, without a dramatic goodbye. The noise inside your head began to fade. You stopped writing novels in your mind, trying to figure them out. You stopped measuring your worth through their attention, and with every breath you took away from them, something sacred started growing inside you. Peace. A slow-burning, soul-forged kind of peace. And that is when the panic begins. Not for you, but for them. Now they're the ones waking up with racing hearts, checking their phones for a message that isn't coming, wondering who's laughing with you now, wondering how you look so untouched by the chaos they used to wrap you in. Healing isn't silent. It echoes. It travels through energy like a pulse, reaching the very people who thought they broke you for good. And when you stop letting someone live rent-free in your soul, they feel the eviction. Your peace becomes their eviction notice. Your smile becomes their punishment. Your stillness becomes the storm they thought they'd never have to taste. The Stoics never taught us to fight chaos. They taught us to master it. Marcus Aurelius said, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." And you changed your estimate. You stopped giving weight to words that never fed you. You stopped bleeding for people who wouldn't hand you a bandage. You didn't become colder. You became clearer. You didn't become detached. You became untouchable. And now your calmness is a spotlight on their dysfunction, a mirror that reflects their manipulation, a silence that screams, "You don't matter here anymore." And they hate it. They miss the version of you that shattered easily, the one they could poke and get a reaction from. But that version of you no longer exists. You buried it in the ashes of every sleepless night, every overthought message, every ignored cry. They're not missing you, they're mourning their grip, the control they mistook for connection, the leash they thought you'd never break. And when they say, "I miss you," listen closely. They don't miss your heart. They miss the power they held when you didn't know your worth. But now, you are calm, you are still, and you are gone. And that is the chaos they now have to live with forever. Number 5. Your silence makes you a mystery they can't solve. When someone can read you like a worn-out book, they stop valuing the words. When your reactions become routine, your emotions too accessible, and your presence always guaranteed, they stop looking at you with wonder. You become background noise, predictable, replaceable, but The moment you go silent, something dark and powerful happens. You vanish, not from the room, but from their grip. And suddenly, you're no longer a person. They can't see you clearly anymore. You've become a question they can't answer, a thought they can't erase, a mystery they can't solve. And that right there is the beginning of their unraveling. Because silence isn't empty, it's loaded. Loaded with presence, loaded with questions, loaded with power. And when you stop feeding them your thoughts, your energy, your reactions, they spiral. Their minds, once calm in the comfort of your constant availability, now turn on themselves. They begin to fill the space you left behind with fear, obsession, regret. Did you move on? Are you with someone else? Were you really that unbothered all along? The silence doesn't answer them, it taunts them, and the irony is brutal. The same space they once demanded now suffocates them. The silence they once craved is now screaming louder than any fight ever could. Zeno of Citium said that freedom lies in indifference to what does not belong to us. And that's what makes you untouchable now. You're not chasing clarity, not seeking closure, not hung up on proving anything. You've stopped trying to be understood. And that very detachment makes you magnetic, because nothing is more dangerous, more seductive, than someone who doesn't need to be seen, doesn't need to explain, and doesn't beg to be remembered. That's what your silence does. It disturbs the waters they thought were still. You're not playing the petty games anymore. No sub-tweets, no vague quotes, no staged stories. You didn't just disappear from their feed, you disappeared from their control. You didn't become bitter, you became sacred, protected, private, unreachable. And in that inaccessibility they lose their power. They send the breadcrumb texts. They like the stories they swore they'd ignore. They say, just checking in, hoping you'll crack. But they don't know you've built walls in the silence. Walls made of calm, bricks made of boundaries, and gates that don't open just because someone's finally scared to lose you. You're no longer a map they can follow. You're a labyrinth they weren't built to navigate. And as they twist and turn, trying to find the old version of you, the reactive one, the emotional one, you're already gone. Not missing, transformed. You're no longer a chapter in their story. You're the unsolved mystery in their mind. A riddle wrapped in silence, a calm storm they never prepared for. And they'll search for answers in all the wrong places. But they'll never hear from you again, because you're not silence. You're a haunting. They'll call, they always do, but not out of love, out of loss. Not because they finally see your worth, but because they can no longer feel your weakness. They miss the leash, not the bond. The version of you that bled for their comfort, explained yourself in circles, broke your own spirit just to keep the connection alive. That version no longer exists. You didn't just walk away, you rose. You didn't just go silent, you became sacred, cold, powerful, stoic. You became the storm they thought they'd never have to face. And now they don't know how to touch you without burning. They don't know how to speak your name without tasting regret. Your absence has become a punishment, your calm, a curse, your silence, their final lesson. You're no longer chasing closure, you are the closing chapter, and they will never again hold the pen. Subscribe, share this if your silence is your weapon now. Let them talk to the walls, let them beg the void, but never let them touch you again. Some storms aren't meant to return. They're meant to be remembered.